On this episode of Strata in Conversation, I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest to talk all things residential cover. If you had any questions, comments, or queries about residential cover, you can start to pop them away into the chat and we'll make sure we address them during our conversation. Before I do welcome our special guest, I wanted to give you a little bit of an update about next month's Strata in Conversation episode. We've been getting a lot of requests, so I'm delighted to update you that next month we will be welcoming live with me in conversation, not one, but two special guests. Sitting next to me and having what we'll call the Strata Market State of Play will be Kim Johnson, the Chief Executive Officer of CHU, as well as James Macon, the Chief Operating and Financial Officer at CHU, who will be sharing their insights and what they see as currently trending in the strata market. Really, really excited to be able to do this live with them in a studio. So if you'd like to join this session, scan the QR code that you can see on your screen now, and we'll ensure that you're added to this special session. But today we have an equally special guest, one that might be the hardest person in our organization to tie down. I'm about to welcome Gordon Bell, the head of distribution at CHU, for a chat about residential cover. Welcome to Strata in Conversation. Roll the clip. Gordy,
hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, Steve. Really good to see you.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining the series. I couldn't think of anyone I'd rather have for episode 2 of Strata in Conversation. So let's start here, because I know everyone wants to know, where are you? You're the hardest man to tie down. You're in every office at the same time. We never know where you are. Let us know. How's things going? Where are you?
Look, I'm in one of our favorite locations, which is Melbourne, where, as you know, there's a lot going on around the country.
Yeah.
I'm in Melbourne.
Oh, and how's the team down there? And before we dive into residential cover, I know that's specifically why we brought you here. Give us a bit of how's things going to start the year off? What are you and the team hearing?
Oh, look, Steve, it's been a really busy start, but a good start. You know, there's a fantastic vibe out there. We're already seeing many customers and clients, hence my many trips. You know, I'm supporting our distribution team in the BDMs. And look, we're just engaging. We're really about engaging. And there's a big focus on, you know, not just this sort of thing, which is fantastic, but also face-to-face. You know, so we're trying to see as many customers as we can and just ask what do they need from us? So it's good conversations are happening everywhere.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And speaking of many customers and partners and stakeholders and people that, you know, we respect in this business, we already have so many people I can see in the chat and on this online for this session, ready to listen to what you have to share with us and, you know, be a part of this conversation. I'm sure we'll get many questions in the chat. But let's start at the beginning, because I did mention that you were here to talk to us about residential cover. So just start at the beginning. What are we talking about when we talk about residential cover?
Look, I think it's always a very basic point, but it's good to point out why the residential strata insurance policy exists. And it's there for, you know, very simply because strata is not a home insurance policy for apartments. It's really there, you know, to cover the greater good. So from my experience, Steve, I found that owners, you know, they really tend to think about their policy maybe for lucky once a year, you know, when premiums are due for reviewing, that sort of thing. But it is different to that home insurance.
And when we're sort of talking, I know you mentioned the difference around home versus residential cover. When we talk about value for money,
yes,
what are some of those things that owners or committees, how should they be assessing value for money when they're like looking for the best policy for themselves?
That's a really important point, Steve, because, you know, this insurance, you know, sits very often quietly in the background. It's almost ignored and dormant until that is, there's an event. and it quickly elevates
Yeah.
to being, one of the most important things for those living in on our strata blocks. Um, and as we know, what happens then, Steve? The AI kicks in, the Google kicks in, and we start getting questions, which is great. But as the insured, we get a glimpse into the fact, that Resi now is a whole heap of good things. It's way beyond, what people, the lot owners believe it's covering.
So when you say that CHU, and you're talking about Resi specifically, I know that CHU does have a policy specifically for residential cover. Can you sort of give us an overview in what that's all about?
Yeah, look, as we said, look, the distinction is critical. What is the strata or the Resi policy? Therefore, well, very simply, it is there to rebuild and to replace and to repair damage when those events do happen in these homes. And behind that, there are many, there's a lot of variables and unknown costs. So what I would say is, let's get started at the beginning. Professional valuations against a strong brief is critically important. It really is. And this is an important safeguard against being short of funds when most needed.
You sort of answered my next question, but I think I'll ask it anyway. So if you had to sort of give you, and I know you're having these types of conversations all around
Yes.
the country, what I want to ask you is, what do you think owners absolutely need to be aware of or get right when they're looking at finding the right policy for them?
Look, it is what you mentioned earlier, Steve. It's that value for money. So what does that mean? Well, it means looking at the whole policy. Our policies were particularly designed and consists of many covers. It's bundled under one wording for convenience, obviously. But a good starting point for owners and committees is to get a grip on the building cover itself. So how does the total cover work? Well, it's based on the building sum insured plus the related sum limits that work together. So that's critical.
Right.
That's critical.
And with specifically to the policy that CHU has, the CHU residential policy, what do you see as the benefits of that particular policy if you have to have some particular call outs, maybe compared to some other policies in the market?
Yeah, look, there's so much in there, Steve. We do have, of course, the policy wording in the PDS that is chapter and verse of what's in there. But in essence, look at those current limits, look at the updates. These do change. So what I'm talking about here are the standard terms, the special terms, the exclusions. These are all very important parts of that policy wording that, said under each section, particularly section 1, which is the insured building. And what I would say is, look at those, know when they are applied. Are they actually impacting your cover that you need for your particular building? Right back to general exclusions, the ones we all know about, the wear and tear, the maintenance, the defects, all of this impacts cover. So please, my advice is look at those, not just the written word, but there's one other thing, Steve, I think it's important to bring in at this stage, and that's it's very well having a beautiful contract in place, and we know that that's absolutely essential. But what about our approach? The underwriter's approach. I think if getting to know our clients, and I'm talking about the range of right from the lot owners, the brokers, and the managers, we really need to have that relationship so we can understand what is going on in the background with these specific, strata plans. Because some of them are complex and some of them are difficult cases. So, we like to work with managers, with brokers, and make sure that we really are providing the cover that's required.
We covered a lot there. What I want to ask you is, because I'm hearing it on the ground, not only in CHU, but I know that there's a particular focus at CHU on data, in this constant evolution of understanding buildings better through different programs and softwares and AIs and all those types of things. And that obviously feeds into the way that we're able to better support our customers and work with our partners in offering the best products to the end user.
Yep.
Have there been any noteworthy changes within that policy that reflect that, or any noteworthy things that you can talk about that are like updates or changes within the residential policy?
Oh, look, Steve, there's plenty. And let's say right up front, CHU's intent is for our policy to respond when it needs to and to pay legitimate claims. I mean, that's the core, right? So essentially, it is about looking at those things, but there's some notable, changes. A good example that comes to mind, I guess, straight away is indicative quoting process, which is all about making life easier and faster, for our brokers and managers.
Right, indicative pricing. And when you say indicative pricing, how has that process evolved over time in the time that you've been working in the space that you're in?
Look, we got this regular feedback, from meeting with our brokers and managers, and they want a simpler quoting process for new business.
Yeah.
So essentially, we looked at that and said, how can we remove the friction points there? And this was an obvious one to introduce, and it's gone down particularly well. The early indication that's very, very popular, and it's proving to be a winner because it does simplify that whole process of getting a quote out very quickly when we're asked.
Oh, that sounds like a real positive and something that's come, because this is what I'm hearing, that like, what are the customers saying? Even within this series, we're listening to the customers, what's going on, and how are we able to implement processes and procedures to really streamline that. So that's actually a really good example that you've made. I want to shift to something else that I know that you happen to know a lot about, and that's lot owners. So I know that CHU have recently added lot owners contents extension. So in your mind, why do you think that this has been significant based on the conversations that you've been having within the industry? And how has that been received, that addition? How's that been received in the market?
A lot of the contents option, there's strong interest out there. And the reason is because it's an exciting new addition. I believe it's the first in Strata. And what we've done is we put that in under Section 1, and it allows owners to choose as an option to ensure their contents through the Strata policy. And really, again, Steve, it's about creating simplicity. It's aligning the building and the contents protection together. So it's designed to complement the broader policy rather than replace individual choice.
Okay, so if I've understood this correctly, does this replace an owner's personal contents insurance?
No, it's not designed to replace the personal contents policy.
Okay.
Look, what you do, Steve, you choose and extend the cover to include contents for the apartments, and you choose a 10,000 limit, a 20,000 per lot limit. So it's very simple, and it applies to things such as the lot owner's carpets, the curtains, the blinds, all those sort of things that could get damaged when there is an event, under Section 1.
Understood. And I guess the big question, and I think I asked this of both Fraser and Cara last episode, was it's nice that and you referred to it, it's nice that it sits in wording in a policy, but I guess the challenge question to you, and I know you're up for it, is that's nice that it's there, but how does that all play out? What are the benefits? Talk me through, how does this play out when it actually comes to crunch time? And we're obviously talking about when it comes to making a claim. Can you talk me through that?
Sure. So as we said, look, it's not meant to replace, but what it does do, it simplifies the process. It's simple. There's one access, for example, not two. There's one communication going on at the time that things need to be repaired. So it is there really just to top up, but most importantly, it's the communication side is very, very simplified by having this sitting there. It means you haven't got to make two calls, deal with two insurers. So it really is a true benefit for that lot owner when things are damaged and their personal contents normally would be excluded.
I think that you said it to me, because a lot of the technical things I know that you're well versed in. And for me, as a lot owner myself, You summed up the benefit to me right there. The one call instead of two calls. I cannot think of anything worse, and I can imagine that there's lots of lot owners when it does come to claims time or simplifying that process. It's so good to hear that that is an option and an add-on that's been
Yeah.
placed there. And is that sort of what it was designed to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, we're always looking, and this is a really great example. We're always looking to simplify the claims experience. So this is one insurer, one process, one excess. It's faster resolution for owners and committees. And honestly, what I'm hearing from everybody, it's a win-win-win scenario. It's really great addition.
Yeah, so that I know you answered this at the outset, but so from what you're hearing, and again, your frequent flyer miles are greater than anyone else probably on this call. Has this been received? Sort of the reaction to this has been received really well. Are people taking this up? Where are we at in the stage of this rollout? Talk me through that.
Look, it is very new, Steve. So we're making sure that it's on the agenda when we have our catch-ups with managers and brokers. We do, propose this as a really great win for everybody.
Yeah.
There is some take-up. We'd like more. We'd like more because we really believe this, as we said, it's a positive for all parties that are involved with this. So we'd like the take-up to improve. It's a very simple product. It's sitting there. It just has to be ticked. The one thing I would say is, look, you can't have individual apartment owners opting in and out. It has to be the whole building. So there must be, as we said in the beginning, there's a couple of simple things. There must be damage as a result of rainwater, storm, that sort of thing. The sum insured, shouldn't have been exhausted. And obviously it applies only, as we're talking about today, to residential.
Understood. And without you and I going through every part of the wording on this conversation today for all of the people that are currently in there,
Yes.
would it be safe to say that anyone on the call could reach out for a conversation with any one of your distribution team to have a more in-depth conversation or to be pointed in the right direction if they want to hear more about what this can do for them?
Steve, we would absolutely love that. We really would. And we're open for that conversation. And it's not a long one. We can give you that very simple summary, as I said, in terms of what the benefits are. And it's very simple to implement. It's a tick on the policy, a request form.
A tick on the form is what I'm all about.
Brilliant.
Another call, I'm out. So that's great to hear. It sounds like this has been designed for me because I am that guy. I just need that additional row to tick, and that's what I'm all about. I wanted to make a slight pivot because I know there's another inclusion within this residential policy, but I want to really understand what it is before we dive into what it does, and that is office bearers insurance.
Yes.
So could you give me a quick overview for the person who doesn't even understand what that is? Can you talk to us about what is office bearers before we dive into its inclusion in that?
Look, this is a great cover, Steve. The office bearers is provided under Section 5 of our particular, resi policy. And it applies to anybody serving on the committee, that treasurer, that chairman, the people that are making decisions.
And what is it designed to do or protect?
Well, we've been pretty smart, Steve. This is a new addition. What we've done is we've now included this automatically at a default level of 5 million. Now, that's a fantastic figure. So what this means is committees now are protected up to 5 automatically with our policy. This most policies is an option, right? But we believe it's so important to protect the committee that are hands-on. They're really in there making decisions, making sure things are done, and they're exposed. We've got to remember these people are essentially volunteers. To have this cover is a real good peace of mind for them, knowing that if they inadvertently do something that they shouldn't have done or made a decision, in all innocence, that will mean that they're up for a, potential case against them. This will protect them against that.
Right. Okay. Now I'm starting to understand office bearers. So it's protecting anyone that sits within that organization or strata committee.
Yep.
Can you just give me, just so I can really paint that picture, what might be an instance where this would come in. You talked about made a wrong decision or something may have occurred where this would apply.
Yep.
What is a real life scenario where you'd go, "Ooh, we're lucky that we had that office bearers"? What could happen in the real world?
Gosh, these people, they take on a lot of responsibility, Steve. So there's a long list of things that can happen. I can rattle off the obvious ones. For example, when things go wrong, delayed maintenance issues, that could open you up to some sort of legal exposure and carry some personal liability. Missing defects claim, unauthorized works, people want to get things corrected, but sometimes they go beyond what they should do. So they're unauthorized or they're outside the protocols of what's agreed by that strata plan or the bylaws. So these individual members, the important point, Steve, is they'll be held personally liable. And this is such an important cover to take that worry away because these damages can be significant.
The thing that you've just mentioned is that when you say that these people are volunteers and they're doing it because they want to be on a committee or have a vested interest to be in a committee, and then they all of a sudden, are exposed to maybe personal liability, I think that you've really painted the picture as to why this might be really critically important and such a positive addition to that residential policy. I think what I'd like to know is, and I'll ask you the same thing again, as when we spoke previously about the residential. How does it? Because I know this is addition within the residential policy. How does this play out when it does come? We hope it doesn't, but when it does come to claim time, how does this office bearers section of the policy play out?
Well, look, it responds when there's some sort of negligence. I guess it could be neglecting. Poor lighting is a great one. What happens there? If you're, there are areas poorly lit. You could get trips and falls. Now, the lot owner or the poor person that's suffering from that will rightly expect some sort of compensation. No, it's an innocent thing, but there's some big damages behind that. So it plays out in the claims time where we will engage, lawyers if we need to just bring out the facts and just check those allegations of negligence or mismanagement or poor governance. All of these things can come from, sort of left field sometimes. So these committee members really, they do act with the best intentions, but things do go wrong, as we know. So this ensures that those costs, those legal costs, you've got CHU standing beside you at that time and with that legal expertise. And that, those costs up to 5 million will, and compensation will be borne, not personally, but under the policy.
Understood. I think that was a really good explanation. So I think that what I want to do is I want to ask you, if there were committee members on this call listening now, I know we have a number of people tuning in. What are some of those things that you, in your position, your experience, and having the privilege to hear from so many different of the stakeholders within the process, what would you advise those committee members to do to sort of protect themselves and that particular scheme?
Look, that's a really good point that we should be discussing, and you know why, Steve? Because it's about good governance. It's absolutely essential to have good governance, and the committee members, they should keep, for example, very, very clear written records of meetings. Record communications. Write down why decisions have been made and what prompted those decisions. Keep copies of contracts. Keep copies of complaints. Keep on top of complaints. If any potential offers there a claim, needs to be advised to us, obviously within the policy period and as soon as possible. But what we're looking for, you mentioned that, what happens at the time of a claim. We're looking to find out what actually has happened. And these records and good governance is absolutely essential.
I think it's those practical steps that really speak to me, because I walk away not only understanding what section of the policy that you're talking about, because I know that you have a deep understanding, but if I'm Joe Smith and I want to know what can I practically do, I think that advice might really resonate with some of the people that we have on the call.
Look, Steve, when we're investigating potential liability, which is a serious matter, we're really assessing whether those decisions were made in good faith, right? So In other words, were they reasonable? Were standards of care exercised? Was the intent and was there honesty involved with these decisions? These factors absolutely materially influence both the outcome of the claim and also the level of payout. So, yeah, we will work with those committee members to make sure that we get to the facts.
Having covered off, this policy, the residential policy, and then the lot owners and the office bearers, it sounds to me, if I've understood correctly, and I'm asking you to challenge, if because I want to make sure that the people on the call have understood this. It's more around CHU providing that like holistic support.
Yeah.
When it matters most, and we will be standing alongside of you, because I think that some of the things you articulated, certainly if without that explanation, would have gone over my head, which is why I asked you to really break that down. Is that the way you see this policy, as just like CHU staying in a support role beside throughout the process?
Yes. Look, experience in my view doesn't come overnight, and this policy has been improved. It was launched a long, long time ago, as you know, and the important thing is what we're doing with it now. And we are constantly looking for improvements, constantly looking to close gaps on our policy. So it's critically important that you understand all the sections in there. There are, as we mentioned earlier, the building sum insured is the heartbeat of this policy. But there are very important covers under, the section 2 for liability. So my advice is, look, delve into each of these covers. They've been put in there specifically to protect the lot owner and the committees and all those living in strata. So, the liability, is important under section 2. The volunteers, workers, is important under section 3. And it's worth mentioning, for example, a recent change. We've increased those benefits to 300,000, for any potential death, permanent loss of sight, or injury. That's an important upgrade that probably hasn't got out there yet in the market. Section 4 fidelity guarantee, we know the importance of that. We talked about office bearers, and all of these together protect, and have been designed to protect that community.
I love hearing that it's not something, a big document that gets thrown in a top drawer and it never gets updated. I can hear all of the updates that you're talking about, the passion that you talk about, why you've made those. And I can imagine that you've made those changes by doing what you do and the role that you hold, and speaking to brokers and speaking to stakeholders and speaking to strata managers. So I guess for me, having spoken about those 3 elements, what I want to ask you now is, in your travels and in your role, why don't you give our listeners an insight into what in your chats with brokers, what are some of the most common questions that you're being asked as we sit here at the beginning of 2026?
Oh, look, we are asked obviously about the policy itself, and then premiums is a big discussion. And I'm really happy to report that premiums now, people are getting a grip of why they are what they are. In other words, it's not just about that top line. It is about the cover that's in there and all those bits that make up the premium. So yeah, that's one area. But I think more importantly, people want to know what happens in practice when there is something that needs sorting out. So when there is a claim, how are you going to react? What is your resources sitting behind, this thing called CHU Resi policy that really means that you've got the experience and the route to make my life easier and to put things back as soon as practical. So I think that's really, what we're hearing more and more about is, you mentioned it earlier, what's the value? And that's a really important topic because it is a very, big area, but it's way beyond just the premium you're paying. And I'm hoping once people hear about the extent of cover, the resources that we put into, as I said, we're always looking to improve things. We're never standing still. But that's what's important, because the contract is the contract. So please, look at your PDS, look at your insurance, certificate, because that'll give you the sublimits of what you're actually getting. But then talk to your insurer, talk to us about, okay, when things do need actioning, who's going to do it? And we got a vast team of experts, right? We really have. They've been built up, as I said, over years. We've got a massive amount of experience in dealing with complex and the simple. So we're up for that challenge. We want to have dialogues. We want to put things right. And yeah, we've got a fantastic team that's on the road, as you know, through our BDMs. We got fantastic underwriters. I can go on and on. The team is up for working with our stakeholders and our clients.
I know you do, but what I also know is that none of them travel as much as you do.
Yeah, my wife often wonders where I am.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy I could tie you down, and we could, like as you said, we could go on and on and on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on the spot. I know we haven't planned for this at all, but I'm going to ask you a question to close out, and that is because I know we have a number of different stakeholders on the call.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just see by the number of questions that's come in, the different angles that people are asking from their own benefit, that's happening live right now. What I want to ask you is if you had to summarize, I know we've spoken about residential, and I know we've spoken about lot owners, and I know we've spoken about office bearers. If you could give the Gordon's top 3 of things that people should be aware of to have that common focus on doing the right thing by our lot owners to ensure their protection, what are those top 3 things that you are advising everyone on the call now to be aware of and to proactively do?
Well, number one would be just remember the cover that we're providing under the Resi is a collection of covers. It's been very deliberately designed for strata living, and our job is to simplify the approach and the execution. And the bottom line is we want to make life easier for the customer and for our business partners. That's number 1. Okay, number 2, please look at the upgrades and improvements. We've gone through so many today. Please ensure that this is a really good fit for your building, for your OC, for the body corporate. And then thirdly, I end with that really important point of value. Look at the extent of cover, the ability and the capability of the underwriter that's looking after you in your building. Check out the track record. What is their customer focus? What is their ability to respond when most matters? So to me, those are the top 3 things, because our policy is never fixed, Steve. It's always improving. I have to say with confidence, it is market leading. We're always out there innovating. I have to give a shout out to our fantastic, IT team. They are constantly improving Strata Tech. They're using APIs. They're bringing in, some fantastic things that, again, it's all designed to make life easier for our end client. And that's the bottom line. If we're making life better and we're not protecting the risk at a better level and using the data to simplify things, then honestly, we shouldn't be doing it. And we have got that very clear mindset that this is about protecting our buildings and our people and making life easier for all those concerned with Strata.
I don't know how I could sum that up any better. I'm not sure where we could leave it at a better place than that. Gordon Bell, thank you so much for your time. That was worth its weight in gold, really. And I learned a lot. Like the way you've segmented those sections out of our discussion, I think not only helped me, but I have no doubt helped a lot of people on the call today. And I just wanted to have that second call out that if people had those questions or queries or wanted to have an in-depth discussion, I'll let you drive this. Did you want to do a quick shout out that they can reach out to their local BDM? I'll let you do that.
No, absolutely. Look, our BDMs are well known in the market. They've got very good relationships, and their mobiles, their emails are all out there. As I say, they're out on the road a lot, visiting our clients. So please use and abuse them as much as you want. We've got a massive team sitting behind that, with underwriting and claims. And as you know, we're CHU. You can talk to anybody at any time. You can talk to Mr. Chipak if you need to, or you can talk to Gordon Bell, or you can talk to the underwriter that's dealing with your particular quote. So it's a very flat line here. We love talking to you. Please take advantage of that.
Well, I've loved talking to you. No one else had that pleasure right now. On behalf of all of the people that have been logged onto this session, hey, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And now I'm talking to the camera. Thanks to everyone who took the time to post a comment or a question or a query. I hope you got your answer, but you've heard it from Gordon himself. Reach out, have a chat with us, ask the question, and we're here to support you. Gordon, thanks so much.
It's been a pleasure, Steve. It really has.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to do one more shout out and reminder: scan that QR code that's popping up on your screen right now. I can promise you, you do not want to miss Strata in Conversation episode 3. That will feature a live on the couch conversation with Kim Johnson, CEO, and James Macon, CFO and COO. They will be providing our what we call the Strata Market State of Play. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and found it beneficial. Remember that everyone who's logged on will receive their CPI or CPD points, so stay tuned for those. And I really, really look forward to hearing any feedback or comments around what you found beneficial within these conversations. I know I sure did. Thank you again for your time. And one more time, this is Strata in Conversation. See you next time.